Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for June 16th, 2022. Go ahead and get started. Lots of things to talk about this week. So so let's talk about Google Search Console. Google Search Console, obviously, if you have a website, you should actually have verified the website in Google Search Console for all the versions of your website, the HTTP version, the HTTPS version, the HTTP www, and the HTTPS www version. There's 4 versions typically of your website. You should have verified all of those, as well as at the domain level as well. So anyway, Google Search Console is actually reporting this week that they're now showing us in reports. They're showing if an error is invalid or valid in terms of it being an issue for Google to process for indexing or ranking. So as of right now, you can go into Google Search Console and see if the error that they're reporting, whether or not that actually is an issue for indexing and ranking your pages. So if it is an issue for ranking and indexing, then I actually recommend that you look at that issue. If it's not an issue for indexing or ranking, you may want to see it as less a priority of an issue. So Google is actually testing FAQs based on trending search queries. So what that basically means is let's talk about breaking news. If there's a breaking news item, okay, and all of a sudden, or news in some industry, it's not, basically is a trending search query, meaning that there's now more and more people searching for that particular keyword. Well, in certain cases, Google will actually show an FAQ, and that's an opportunity for you. So basically, if you watch the news in your industry, and let's say there's a certain search query or keyword that everybody's starting to search for, and you've noticed that, well, what you would want to do is maybe make a blog post and have some FAQ questions on there and answer those questions, those basics. So that would actually could potentially bring you some traffic, because if the FAQs are actually like people also asked, then that's an opportunity to gain some traffic in an area that is trending and might have bring some traffic. So Google's now actually showing. So if you have a Google account and you are managing a Google business profile, meaning that a business that has a listing in Google Maps, for example, if you are actually managing that particular profile, and it's part of your account, then there's a new widget that Google's showing in the search results. So let's say you're managing your business Google business profile for you or your client, and you actually search for that company name, okay, to see how they're ranking. Well, in that case, Google will actually show you a little widget in the search results there, just for you. You're the only one, because you're logged into that Google account that manages the listing. It just show you the profile strength of your listing. So it's kind of important to look at. I don't suspect it shows a huge amount of data, but basically, if you have not filled out your profile, like for example, you don't have photos, or you've not added, there are certain parts of the profile you haven't filled out, like the hours of service or hours of operation or something like that, then you'll have a less, your profile strength will be less. So that is a new widget that they're showing. So Google is testing out also some new feature snippet layouts. I have not looked at them or seen them yet, but I haven't done a lot of searches yesterday or today or today that actually shows those new feature snippets. We'll have to take a look. So Google back to Google My Business, Google business profiles, Google Map listings. So some businesses have actually reported that in the 3-pack or the map pack, we call it, when you do a search for, let's say, Dallas Home Inspector, that is a local keyword with a service and that will show the maps, Google Maps listings in the search results. Some businesses there might actually have one of their reviews featured in that, in that listing. And so some businesses may not. So you're pretty sure that this is because some reviews have been marked as helpful or have a thumbs up, and by quite a few people. And then some businesses may not have those thumbs up or as many. I'm not I'm kind of starting to test that. My theory is that I think it's related to the thumbs up and whether or not certain reviews are actually have that thumbs up, and that might cause Google to show a review specifically in the map pack. But in certain cases, it's showing for some and not showing any at all. And this is not based on the number of reviews, because I've seen listings and kind of looking at this, I've seen listings where there are, one business has 700 reviews and they don't have a, review there as a kind of a preview, right? Where others have 100 reviews and they actually have, a review that is a kind of a preview that's part of their listing. The theory is, like I said, the theory is that some of those reviews have been marked as helpful in a certain number of percentage of them, and so that has spurred that review to show up. The biggest kind of change that you may want to pay attention to is that Twitter has removed the nofollow tag from links in tweets. I've generally recommended to tweet URLs to new blog posts, new articles, and so forth. Don't go through and on your Twitter account and constantly be tweeting a URL over and over again, or different blog posts. Just basically, when you tweet a URL, you're not going to get a lot of engagement. You're not going to, someone is just not going to follow your account because you're constantly tweeting URLs and sending traffic to other, to websites. Now, for example, certain news sites like, Fox News, CNN, Washington Post, et cetera, New York Times, you would expect them to tweet URLs. However, that, normal tweet, normal accounts, if you will, or most accounts, you probably just don't want to continually to tweet URLs over and over again. So it's basically, it's widely known that tweeting a URL will get it crawled, and it tends to get it crawled, even though that nofollow tag has been in place for years. However, keep in mind, though, that now we have potential of PageRank being passed. So you may want to consider taking your latest tweets and embedding them on your site. So then you might be passing PageRank to the tweet, and then actually passing it back either to your site or somewhere else. But if you want to, for most accounts, though, with a lot of followers, we want to keep URLs and tweets kind of to a minimum, so that you have more engagement, more likes, and so forth, right? So you may want to use another Twitter account to tweet URLs. That is consideration. If you do have one of those, if you want pages to get indexed, that might be a consideration if there are certain URLs that you're having trouble getting indexed. Now, moving on. So anyway, DuckDuckGo. Let's talk about the DuckDuckGo search engine. Frankly, we have been seeing well over for months and months, over 100 million searches a day since January 2021. However, the past few months, we're now seeing a lot less searches these past few months. People are, there's less number of searches at DuckDuckGo than normal. And so this is kind of a concern. Are we seeing, the downfall of the DuckDuckGo search engine? I think it's still too early to tell specifically because of the fact that it's just too early to tell. It could be other factors. I have seen in the past DuckDuckGo doing very significant amount of offline marketing, such as billboards, such as radio, etc. So that they may have stopped. They may actually have stopped doing their offline marketing or their marketing of the search engine. So that might have an issue. That might have caused in the past month, few months, people might, might be doing less searches there and using it less. We don't know. We need to, we need to kind of watch that and see if they're still, if it's still trending down, or if it's just seasonal, or just because of their marketing efforts. Now, I want to mention a site that I like, SEOjobs.com. I've actually mentioned SEOjobs.com to several people I know who have been looking for a new opportunity in the SEO industry. So specifically, if you're looking for, SEO or PPC related jobs, that is a great resource. I certainly would look at LinkedIn jobs, but again, also SEOjobs.com is actually a very good, fairly new site, but it does have got a lot of good listings. And of course, if you're hiring, that is a site that where I would make sure that you have a listing there, because people who are in the SEO industry are using SEO jobs, and that's somewhere where you would want to have a listing there. So Google Analytics and GA4. So Google, as we know, you probably know, Google has been wanting us to move from the old Google Analytics to the new GA4. I know it's confusing that to use it and so forth. However, we're going to have to move, and I recommend that you do actually go ahead and spend the time now to move, get the code going, and because again, next year we will all be forced to use GA4 if we want to use Google Analytics, and so at this point, what I recommend and what all the Google Analytics experts are recommending are that we run both the code for GA4 as well as the code for Google Analytics. So you would have essentially both of those codes on your site. Now, I don't think it's a problem at all. It's not going to be a problem at all to actually, it's not going to slow down your site. It's not going to have any really impact on rankings. But again, what I recommend right now is that you use both codes, because what's going to happen is once you move over to GA4, okay, once you move, you are not going to have the data from Google Analytics. That's not going to, you're not going to have that historical data moved over. It's just not going to be moved over. So if you install it now, you've got probably, let's say, a year of data that is going to be that you'll be able to work with. And so you'll have that as some historical data. If you just wait, if you literally just wait until you're forced to run, to move to Google Analytics for GA4 and then install that code, you won't have any previous data, and it's just basically exactly starting fresh. And so that might not be helpful to you. So again, run and install both. You probably have Google Analytics installed right now. Don't remove that code. Leave that code there. Just add the new Google Analytics code and upgrade. And then you should be able to access both as we go forward. So big question, moving on. So big question about CDNs and content delivery networks, such as Cloudflare, BitMitigate, etc. So there was a question, and that John Mueller from Google answered this week, which is interesting. The question was around whether or not a CDN or adding a CDN can improve Google rankings. And the short answer is adding a CDN does not have any SEO effect. It will not improve your rankings. But there is obviously a caveat there that I'll get into. So if your website visitors across the globe, okay, are not consistently seeing a fast loading site, like for example, let's say your website is hosted in the United States. So a visitor from Europe or a visitor from Australia or visitor from India is trying to access your server, and it might take a little bit longer for them, and your site might not load as quickly. A CDN solves that issue, where basically a content delivery network, the idea behind it is that you have your web server, let's say in the United States somewhere. Well, there's a copy of your website or your web page and all the images and everything in Australia. There's also one in Europe. There's also one in India, and so forth, all around the globe. The idea is that basically, if somebody from Australia tries to access your website, it will load quickly for them, because the version that is on a server in Australia will load for them quickly. Same thing with other countries and other locations. That is, the concept behind a CDN. Now that will make sure that your web pages load fast for everybody. Now, if your web server and you're really only targeting or even allowing, maybe your products are only, you can only sell your products in the United States, and you basically are shutting out all international traffic to your site. Well, it might not be as critical. However, still you may want to cache your pages and use a CDN, because there's other reasons why. For example, Cloudflare will filter a lot of the bad bots, a lot of the bad crawlers and so forth. They will filter all those out, so that basically, only essentially human visitors and good crawlers like Google's crawlers will have access to your site. So generally speaking, it's not critical for SEO. It doesn't have an SEO ranking effect. However, let's look at what John Mueller said. Specifically, if Google's crawling is slow, okay, and then you might consider how the effect on adding a CDN. It might allow them to crawl and index faster, and it might actually help the situation. So we know crawling and indexing has an effect on rankings, not specific, but again, if you've done an analysis and determined that your website is fairly slow and caching the pages does help, then it will help probably the crawlers crawl faster, and then they can index the website faster. And if that's the case, that may help your rankings indirectly. Finally, just so on the subject of domain names, I like to talk actually mention something related to domains, and not just Google search and so forth, and social media. So regarding domain names, some registrars such as Namecheap are actually starting to upsell things like cyber liability insurance. Cyber liability insurance, covers things like whether or not your network or phishing attempts and and issues and ransomware and so forth. However, cyber liability insurance does not at all cover, at all, it does not cover the loss or theft of a domain name. And so so it may be confusing that you're at Namecheap or a domain registrar, and you are, and they're trying to sell you cyber liability insurance. That actually may be pretty good. And in a lot of cases, it's very good for organizations to have that. And at $20 a year for $250,000 of coverage, that's great. Okay. I mean, that's good. But you keep in mind, though, that it can be confusing because cyber liability insurance does not cover the loss or theft of your domain name. And so at the same time, here you are buying a domain name, but and they're selling you this cyber liability insurance. You may, don't be confused, because cyber liability does not cover domain names, even though you're buying it at a registrar. Okay, it does not cover the loss of theft of domains. There's only one company right now. There's only one organization, which is DN Protect, dnprotect.com, that covers the loss or theft of your domain name. Just as a side note, I help run DN Protect, and again, this is just as to be transparent about it. But again, Namecheap is selling cyber liability insurance. That's great to have if you are, if you need that cyber liability. However, everybody actually does need to protect their domain name. And so that's why we offer DN Protect and domain name protection at dnprotect.com. That said, this is the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for June 16th, 2022. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am live on Facebook, as you recall. I am live on Facebook every Thursday afternoon at 1:30 Mountain Time. And obviously, you may be hearing this on your favorite podcast network, or such as iHeartRadio, Google, Amazon Music, or Amazon Podcasts, as well as Apple Podcasts. But you can catch me live and on Facebook every Thursday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Thanks again. This has been the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for Thursday, June 16th, 2022. And we will talk to you next week at this time. Thanks.